Hello, and welcome to another video. This time we're going to be talking about crucial keys to mastering jungle, and joining us in the replay will be Vitality's bow on Diana. Even a lot of high elo players fail on some of these tips, so make sure to subscribe if you want to be better than them, I suppose. First up, let's talk about planning ahead. Most of them don't fail that one, but as a jungler, it's a very important thing to keep in mind. It's important to have a clear idea of what you want to accomplish in the early game, and this is going to start at champ select. This will obviously mean that we need to figure out which jungle route we want to choose, which items we want to choose, which items we might want in game, and of course to communicate with your team. You're not going to want to draft full AP, you're not going to want to draft full AD, for example. You're not going to want to draft a champion that struggles into a certain comp into that comp, and so on. The lower elo you are, the less this will matter, but it's still a pretty big thing to think about if you do play at least 2 champions, so you can at least pick between those. After that, it's very important to think about how you want to impact the map, what your champion will do within the game, and of course what kind of champion we're playing, right? If we're a full clearing jungle, maybe we'll go for that. While if we're more of a gank or invading jungler, we'll go for that. A good general rule here that I've learned after playing the game for a while is that if you can't get to level 4 first on a champion that fights well, you will most likely invade. If you can't get to level 4 first on a champion that ganks well, you'll most likely do that. And if you can get to level 4 first, or you simply cannot do either one of those things, then most likely you'll stick to farming. So that's a general rule for that. Thinking about the lanes you might want to win is an important concept, and in the replay we're also showcasing that. Vitality's bow realizes this. He's not going to path into a Gragas and Tahm Kench lane, right? There's no point in pathing into a lane that has 2 tanks that are not very interactive and that aren't the win condition in a game, when you have 2 ranged champions that have to stomp the lane and 2 ranged champions that need to survive the lane. So, as we can see, he is a master of his craft, I suppose. But here's the thing, things don't always go according to plan. We have all had those games where our bot lane dies before we even finish our clear, where we get invaded by the enemy mid lane, where we die on our clear, and so on. Here it's crucial to become an adaptable player. As a jungler, it's your job to roll with the punches and adjust your strategy when it's needed. This can mean switching up your jungle route to not die, to stop the enemy invade, to take part in a skirmish, to invade, or even just to gank early. There is no reason for you to always be stuck doing the same clear every single game, though there is also no reason for you to, as a base plan, reject using the same plan every game, because if it's a good plan, then most likely it's going to be good in a lot of cases. It's just that you need to be adaptable and ready to make a new plan. Don't forget though that your camps will always be up and everything else will slowly disappear. So if there's a chance and you believe that the chance is pretty much guaranteed, then you should probably go for it. Worst case scenario, you will just learn why it wasn't guaranteed. For example, here in this replay, we will see Bo adapting from his full clear and deciding, well, enemy bot lane is pushing, enemy bot lane is low HP, and enemy bot lane has no summoner spells. Maybe if I walk bot lane, I can collect some kills. This is what makes Bo one of the best junglers, because he simply understands all of the fundamental concepts of the jungle role. As you can see, his camps are still up, obviously. They're not going to disappear magically, so he still gets to do them anyway. Our final tip is going to be about understanding tempo. In League of Legends, tempo refers to the pace of the game and who has the advantage. As a jungler, it's important to know when to take risks and when to play defensively. Coordinating with your team is also going to be a big part of the game. So you need to figure out how to create an advantage and maintain control of the game. A good jungler will understand when his team is not ready to play and when they are ready to play. if your team is just coming from base, or if your team is stuck in base, or if your team needs to base right now. Those are pretty important things to note. If a support died, they will come back on the map with a tempo advantage, for example. The first support to die, even if he's losing lane, is probably going to be mid lane or top lane first, ganking that lane, if it's a higher elo game. While if it's a lower elo game, maybe he will just show up in the jungle somewhere, so maybe you have to be careful and invade. Now, all that being said, you should remember that the enemy jungler also has his own tempo. So if the enemy jungler failed a gank, you now have tempo advantage. If the enemy jungler decided to do an objective, then you have tempo on a different play. For example, if he decides to do Herald, then you have tempo on bot lane, and so on and so forth. So this is something to really try to hammer in and try to get good at, because this is the main tip that even high elo players will often fail at. Think like master players, GM players. These people will often misunderstand tempo or not understand it at all. So this is a really important thing to understand. So in the following play by Bo, we will see a difference in understanding of tempo, where Bo will play his fight properly. He will realize that right now his mid laner is off the map, he is dead, and he's going to have to wait for his mid laner, right? While the enemy mid laner is already on the map. The enemy mid laner is here and playing. The enemy support here and playing. His support also here. But this is a 3v2 for the enemy team, right? So we have to play slow, try to outplay, do something like that. Because this is how you're forced to play when you play against a tempo advantage. So when you have a tempo disadvantage, he somehow manages to outplay it and get a kill. So right now, this is really good for Bo, but this is not a disaster for the enemy team, right? But then you see the enemy team is misunderstanding their position. They don't get that the Tryndamere, who's coming back from base, is going to collapse on them. They're not really keeping track of his tempo, right? It's not that difficult to keep track of the tempo of one person, where you just figure out, well, the support just died, so he's gonna come mid. But when you have to keep track of all 5 people, it can become pretty difficult sometimes. So then he gets largely rewarded for it. Like, this is just something that can happen, I suppose. But if you look at the start of the game, then you would see that his mid laner started with 1 kill, his bot lane got 2v2 killed, and his mid lane also died to a support gank. So without his impact, the only lane he really has is the top laner, who's playing a 1v1 tank matchup. So mid lane is kind of meh, to be honest, and bot lane was doing kind of bad because they were losing 2v2. But in the end, he was a difference maker. And he goes on to win this game with an astounding 27 kills in 19 minutes. And all of that lead that we see here, where he has 27 kills in 19 minutes, all of it starts here. He starts the game with 4 kills. 4 kills at 5 minutes, just by understanding these simple concepts. So I think this is something that you should try your best to apply to your gameplay. And I think that these are the most important tips in the jungle by far, because understanding these tips will make you a much more consistent player, a much better player when you try to come back, and also a much better carry. So I hope you learned something from this video. If you did, like and subscribe. If you didn't, comment why you didn't learn anything or why you didn't like the video or whatever. And I'll see you next time.